Welcome to Cork. Welcome to Cork, Lauren. You're officially in Cork tonight.
I'm there in spirit.
It's your second city after Belfast.
My second. Yeah, absolutely. Belfast and Cork, without a fail, my two favourite cities in Ireland, and certainly two favourites for a night out.
Welcome to the Shebeen, everybody. It's Sunday night, and we're talking all things Cork tonight. We have our red Cork colours flying on the banners there on the screen. We're diving into Cork's best whiskey bars. We're going to take on a virtual tour of those bars of Cork tonight. We're going to have the crack. This was an easy one to get ready for because I did some research during the week, hopping around these bars just for tonight, just with tonight in mind, as if I needed any reminder. But we're going to take you on a virtual tour tonight, and we're going to talk about where to find the best whiskies, where to find the best crack, and maybe even where to find the best pint. I've got my Beamish here. I'm going to pour a pint. What are you drinking?
Oh,
you got yours.
So you're passing a session off now as research for the Shebeen. Is that how it is?
This is a tax write-off due to its use in a professional setting. So it's the only way we can write off our alcohol purchases.
We're all watching your pour here now.
Yeah, don't be worrying about my pour now. I know you get jealous.
You didn't even let it settle. Didn't even let it settle. Mine looks better than yours now this time, I think, even though I've had a few drinks of it.
I've poured it all straight there now because I'm impatient, but it'll settle lovely. Trust me, this will settle nice.
I believe you.
Wherever you're joining us from, you're very welcome. I see some great whiskies being poured tonight. Great Cork whiskies, great Stories and Sips whiskies. Fair play to you all. And delighted to have you join us tonight. These sessions over the last few months now, Lauren, as you've jumped on, have been a bit of crack, and surprisingly, numbers haven't fallen off despite your presence. Things have actually either maintained or got better.
I'm shocked at that, actually. I honestly thought I would crump your style a little bit and you might see a decrease in those figures each week, but we're holding up well.
We're holding up well. It's early days, though. It's early days. Look at that. Look at that.
Nice. Your impatience paid off there.
I shared a video earlier or last week of a pint of Beamish in one of the pubs we're going to talk about tonight. It would almost be worth me putting it up on the screen here just to remind everybody of the creamy goodness that comes from Cork. This is an important post. We're doing important work here, folks. Never doubt the important work that's been done. All right, so we're going to share this. Okay, so here's a really professional pint of Beamish coming up on the screen here. Greg says he sees a lot of bubbles. Greg, you don't. You do not. I'm going to object to that. Here, let's share a wonderfully beautiful pint of Beamish as it settles in its glass. It's coming.
Oh, I know which one this is. I know which one you're talking about.
Look at that.
Glorious.
Look at that. You can watch that for hours, days. That's beautiful. That's pure Cork there now. Pure Cork. Pure Cork.
Nothing better when you get served a pint with a good dome and a good shtick.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what's missing from this artistically staged photograph or video is the bit of it that's streaming down the back of the glass onto the table, but that was artfully hidden from the video. So I did my homework there on staging that properly.
All smoke and mirrors. I like it.
There are three. Well, I suppose there's 4 stouts in Cork, really, in Ireland. Generally, there'll be the main ones. There's Guinness, which you all know, but in Cork, we kind of lean towards Murphy's and Beamish, the 2 other main ones, historic pints that come from Cork of stout. And then there's the new to the table, new to the stable of Murphy Brewery and Heineken Ireland, which is Ireland's Edge Stout, which awful muck altogether. So there's no point mentioning that.
I haven't tried it yet, I haven't tried it, so I can't comment.
It's kind of thin. There's basil in it, a bit basil for our American friends. It's not. No, don't avoid it. Avoid it at all costs.
You can't have a thin stout. Just doesn't work.
Tyrone says he thought Coors Light was the most popular beer in Cork. No, I don't think it is. No, the most popular lager in Cork would be Heineken, or Ireland generally would be Heineken, who also own Murphy's, and they own Beamish, and they own Ireland's Edge. So it's all sealed up. They've it all tied up.
It's interesting though, Barry, is it not in Cork? I noticed even when you kind of go outside the city a little bit as well, there's a very distinct preference for either Beamish or Murphy's. Like some bars you go into and everyone's sitting drinking Murphy's, and then the next one everyone's drinking Beamish. It's quite a divide, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And there's a science to that too. And maybe it's a bit of science meets psychology. Like when I walk into a bar, and I might not have fully committed walking into either Murphy's or Beamish, and I look around and I'll see what's already being poured, because I don't want to be the first fella to get a Beamish of the day, because I'm just going to get what's stuck in the lines all day. So if there's been Beamish poured around the bar, I'll order the Beamish. If there's Murphy's, I'll go for the Murphy's. I want a good rotation there on the liquid and the pipes.
Jason's just rightfully said there, how could you leave out Black Forged? You forgot about that one.
We're not fans of Conor McGregor, so we're going to leave it at that. We're just not fans of Conor McGregor. You can't separate the man from the brands. Go on.
No, it's like separating the art from the artist. I did see quite a few people posting about it on social media this week, and it wasn't terrible reviews, I will say. But
yeah, but this brings up the very important question about separating the art from the artist, because would you be put off if you had a favorite author, but this is an author, maybe it's an author from turn of the century, would you be put off if you learned later on, after you loved his or her, I'm going to say his books, and then you discovered egregious things that he'd done, or he was a terrible man and he beat people and he was awful, would you still hero his books, or would you try and find a way to move on from them?
I mean, they probably would be a bit tarnished, wouldn't they? You know?
See? You just can't separate the art from the artist.
No.
I don't think.
It's like the allegations coming out this week about a certain very popular mainstream singer. That's going to be hard to overcome for anyone who was a fan, you know.
What are we? Oh, is this some scandal? Have we got some scandal here? What are we talking about?
Scandal? Yeah.
I'm not down with the kids. What have you all been up to this week?
We'll go down such a rabbit hole if we start talking about that one. Yeah, Richard's got it in one. Lizzo.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Okay, all right, yeah.
See what I mean?
I get this. I'd imagine that's a different live stream for us all together. We'll have a separate live stream about
next week.
Yeah, people abusing their power. Have you any whiskey as well, or are you just drinking Beamish?
No, I've actually got a wee bit of Blue Spot in my glass tonight, along with my Beamish. And Blue Spot, obviously one of my favourites. The whiskey you see behind me is only a small selection of what I have in the other room. I just can't put it in my kitchen because my poor mother and father will go mad. And I have some water.
I've got a drop of Jameson single pot still here that I'm sipping on. The only pot still to bear the Jameson name currently being produced in Cork, or anywhere in the world, of course. So this is a newly released Jameson pot still, came out in the last 12 months. It's about 60 euros a bottle here. It's not exported to the US at the moment, and there isn't immediate plans for it to be. But when you come to Ireland, you come to Cork, you'll find this on the shelves in most bars. So I'm keeping it all Cork tonight. And I, of course, most importantly of all, I'm also from Cork. Aside from the Beamish, aside from the Jameson, I'm from Cork.
Did anybody know Barry was from Cork? I don't think you've ever mentioned that before.
In case you didn't know, I may not have brought this up in the past, but I'm from Cork, and that's very important. We're on opposite ends of the country tonight, like you and me. Like you're up on the north coast, you're probably as far away from the ocean north as I am from it in the south, just a few minutes, 15, 20 minutes. And but we're united tonight by a love of one thing, and that's Cork.
And that's Cork. We are.
That's Cork.
We are. I'll be there in how many days? 16 days? Yeah.
You will?
Yeah. About 16 days time. No, I cannot wait. I actually said to Barry earlier, will I try and do this whole shebeen in a Cork accent? But I need a bit more whiskey for that. And we
offered money. We offered a financial incentive for her to undertake the shebeen in a Cork accent.
You did. Anyone who's on the whiskey bus in a few weeks, just maybe feed me a little bit more whiskey and we'll see what comes out. I don't
Listen,
have a bad Cork accent. I just can't do it under pressure.
she has a great Cork accent. I've heard it once, and I spat out my drink when she said it, and when she talked in a Cork accent, and it's worth. We'll get it out of her on the whiskey bus. We'll definitely get it out of her.
You will. We have a funny story. We'll maybe keep that until later about Whiskey Live and Paul Costello. I don't know. I haven't seen him in the comments tonight. I think he's actually just on the way home from his holiday. And it's like a slight miscommunication in terms of our accents. So we'll come on to that later.
Lloyd had a good idea here that everyone should be taking a drink every time I say Cork. And this will be a very short live stream for many of you, I'd say, if that's what's to happen tonight. Cork, what can we say about Cork? I mean, this will be a 6, 7, maybe 8 hour live stream, because what we don't want to do is leave out any soliloquy or love letter or just general affection for maybe the most important city on the island of Ireland for many, many reasons. And I'm not taking any questions on that, nor will I debate it. I'm just putting a red and white Cork flag firmly in the ground and saying, tonight you're all welcome into my part of the world virtually. And in a few weeks, I'll welcome 40 of you to Cork in person on the whiskey bus. So this is a kind of a warm up for that, but it's also a chance for me to wax lyrical and hero some of the great bars and some of the great places that are worth checking out, whether you come with us on the whiskey bus, whether you're planning a visit to Ireland. Cork is full of characters. It's full of unusual people in the best way, and we hero a bit of unusual and a bit of we like oddities and we like strangeness in Cork, and we're full of those people if we know where to find them. And tonight we'll talk about some of those places and some of those people through the bars tonight. But before we dive into that, we have some important work to do to dive into some new whiskies that have come out that have been announced in the past week, right? You're going to be ensuring we stay on time here. Lauren's looking at me going, this is not going to be an 8 hour live stream. Like, we have to move on.
Well, it might be, but I'll be gone and you'll just be sitting there surrounded by whiskey glasses still talking about Cork, and I'll be asleep.
All right, so
New whiskies.
Let me take this banner off here. It's hiding you. All right. So we have 2 whiskies that we want to talk about. I mentioned them in our Facebook community, Irish Whiskey Fans in America, in the last 24 hours. They are the 2 main releases that I've seen released this week. Doesn't mean it's every release. So if you work for a whiskey company and you've released something that we don't know about, by all means, send it to us and we'll always include it every Sunday night. The first one we want to talk about is a Jameson. And it is a 22-year-old blend that was announced without much fanfare. It kind of sneaked out from the Whiskey Exchange in London. And the Whiskey Exchange is a well-known couple of whiskey shops in London. And it is one of the most well-known and one of the most successful and one of the most well-stocked emporiums of whiskey. It's a fantastic place to visit. And over the past few years, the Whiskey Exchange has quietly released some exclusive single barrels and small batch releases from Midleton Distillery as Whiskey Exchange exclusives, and they've been some of the best Midleton whiskies that I've ever tasted. Things like 26-year-old Green Spot, which came out back in 2019, 30-year-old Redbreast, which came out in 2020, I believe, end of 2020, and they've had a few others as well that I can't recall off the top of my head. But now they've got a 22-year-old blend, which is the oldest that I'm aware of, the oldest Jameson with an age statement ever released. It followed the same route that Jameson original follows, which is maturation in bourbon barrels and sherry casks. We don't know the breakdown between pot still and grain in this. I would suspect there's more pot still in this than there is in the original blend, because the original blend has only about between 5 and 10% pot still, and the rest is grain whiskey. This is a cask strength, 56.6% bottling, and 299 pounds, which is about $420 approximately. And the Whiskey Exchange does ship to the United States, to certain states. And if it doesn't ship to your state and you're a big Jameson fan and Jameson collector, I'm sure you'll find a way to get hold of it. I have the 21-year-old here, which is its baby brother or sister, which came out at the end of 2021. or end of 2020, rolling into 2021, I think. This is a 21-year-old blend. I'm going to be honest with you, I wasn't blown away by that. I thought it was off balance. I didn't take to it. I felt like it was it just felt like it was a bit rushed or put together in a way that maybe it deserved a little bit more. This is the old Jameson 18 bottle, which has 18 different divots on the bottle, one for each year. But they basically just said, we'll stick a 21-year-old label on it. There's not 21 divots on the bottle, but we'll go ahead anyway. Anyway, that's our first whiskey that was released this week. Whiskey Exchange, you can find that online. Next up, another 22-year-old whiskey, and that is the Irishman, another 22-year-old whiskey, single malt from Walsh Whiskey. Bernard Walsh, the creator of Writer's Tears and The Irishman, has released an airport exclusive, travel retail exclusive to Cork and Dublin airports. Actually, it's 22-year-old single malt, 21 years in bourbon barrels, and 12 months in Tawny Port cask from the Douro Valley. Under 50% ABV, but still at cask strength. 600 bottles released in 2023, and I think another 600 in 2024. Whopping price of €500 a bottle, which is eye-watering for the direction that Irish whiskey is going. But for those of you who love a bit of Irishman, there's your bottle. That's your jam. That's a big price, isn't it, Lauren?
Yeah, I was going to say, Irish whiskey's not getting any cheaper anyway with the older age statements. Gone are the days where you could pick up a 21, 22-year-old bottle of whiskey for about 120.
I know.
It's not happening anymore.
I know. So whether we like it or not, expensive whiskey's here to stay. I wish I had a 4 or 5-year-old whiskey to share with you that was just $40 somewhere, but sadly I don't. So the two whiskies that were released this week are really on the upper end of the scale, and they won't be for everybody, nor should every whiskey be. That's it. Irish whiskey news. Lauren, over to you.
Irish whiskey news, yes. So we had a lovely bit of news come out from the Midleton Distillery there yesterday. In fact, many of you who know Jarlath and follow Jarlath on social media, and many of you on the Whiskey Bus last year will have met him. He put up a lovely post marking the 10th anniversary of Domville's own stock. So their own distillate has now reached 10 years old. Which is incredible. It's such a milestone for the brand, and a proud day for Domville's and a proud day for County Down. So don't think there's any immediate plans to release it just yet, but I think they're maybe letting it stay in there for a little bit longer. I don't know, Barry, if you've heard any different, but it's just a lovely little milestone for a brand which is very popular in the whiskey community and certainly in our community as well.
It is an amazing milestone. It's hard to actually imagine or remember back when the distillery first opened, but it opened years before I got into whiskey. Like, it tells you how long ago that distillery opened. So it opened in 2000, and just after Dingle opened in 2012, Dunville's opened in 2013, and they were the first distillery after Dingle to open. So Dingle broke the mold in 2012, the first new independent distillery in Ireland in more than 100 years, and then along came Ecklenville, another independent distillery with even more of perhaps a family focus in the sense of everything grain to glass, growing the barley in their own fields, malting floors, distilling themselves. And the whiskey that has just reached 10 years of age, distilled back in 2013, and Ecklenville Distillery has never released their own liquid entirely yet. They have released whiskey from their distillery in the likes of Old Cumber, but they haven't released an entirely Ecklenville release. And my understanding is that they will release later this year. It won't be 10-year-old whiskey; it'll be 9-year-old whiskey, and they have some interesting things in the works. So big time for them, or a big moment for them. If you remember the Stories and Sips Whiskey Club, you might have heard Gerald Watson talk about on the tasting we did for our own Bill's 19-year-old whiskey, which Ecklenville Distillery manages and matures. Jarlath mentioned how they want to make sure that when they release an inaugural release that there is plenty of it available, and it's not just a one-time sellout cask that is gone and nobody can get hold of it. So they want to release something that is a core, that they have enough of it to be a core product, which I think is a smart move. So I'm really interested to see what the packaging looks like and what the responses be. I've tasted some of the response will be. I've tasted a lot of the Eckernville spirits, and they're very unique, very waxy, crayony, cherry, very different.
Yeah, and I mean, look how great they are with their sherry cask management as it is. So I can only imagine that their own liquids in their sherry casks will be something else.
That is the height and the length of our news in Irish whiskey this week. It's been a slow
Not as busy
news
as
week.
some other weeks.
Very slow news week in Irish whiskey. If there's any Irish whiskey news we missed, let us know. And there was a story, interesting story I did read that I meant to send on to you, and we could have included it, I suppose, which was that a woman in Ohio just celebrated her 102nd birthday, and I think she actually lives in Columbus, Ohio, and she claims that one of the secrets to longevity was a drop of Irish whiskey every night, and that is a very good omen for us then. And if it goes hand in hand with longevity, you'll never get rid of us.
I won't lie, I have heard that exact same story a few years ago with a woman who was 104, and someone asked her what her secret was, and she said a drop of whiskey every night before she went to bed. So, I mean, it's clearly a thing.
It's really, I mean, in the right quantities, everything is a medicine. So if you're just taking your medicine every night, sure, why wouldn't you last forever?
Exactly. I mean, I genuinely, as the old Irish proverb goes, what whiskey will not cure, there is no cure for. I had an impacted wisdom tooth last year, and genuinely, I could not get any relief from it whatsoever. And then I held a bit of cask strength whiskey at the side of my mouth, and genuinely, it felt so much better. So there is truth in it. Whiskey is a cure for all.
I believe it. Everything in moderation. Sure, like you look at the Greeks or the Italians and those who come from the areas that are known for quality of life and longevity of life. They always talk about how wine every day is that little bit of medicine, and nothing in dramatic quantities. But I think we could apply the same to Irish whiskey, whether we've been given medical advice to that effect or not. We're just going to roll with it.
Absolutely. If you want to live to a good age, have a drop of whiskey. So you'll suddenly explode.
If you've just joined us, welcome to the Shebeen. We're diving into all things Cork tonight. Next up, we're going to talk, or in a second, we're going to talk about Cork whiskey bars. Give the old video a like, hit the like button, share it in your favourite Facebook communities if you want others to see it and to join us and to join the crack. We meet here every Sunday night with really just one goal, to have the crack and talk about whiskey. We're all into whiskey. We're all into the crack. Bring the two together, and that's the Shebeen. A Shebeen is an illicit, illegal, unlicensed gathering of ne'er-do-wells. And us ne'er-do-wells gather here on a Sunday night to have the crack. And it's a good time.
It's a lovely way to put it. I like that.
A gathering of ne'er-do-wells.
Ne'er-do-wells. Have that as the tagline.
Quick stories and sips update for those of you who are interested in diving deeper into the world of Irish whiskey. We have a whiskey club called the Stories and Sips Whiskey Club, and it is open to members whiskey fans all over the world. And we have whiskey fans all over the world as members. We release exclusive whiskies. We partner with distilleries and brands to get hold of unusual, rare, wildly adventurous whiskies that allow us to dive into the stories of the people, the places, and of course the pours of Irish whiskey. Some quick updates on our club at the moment. We had a great tasting this week with Brendan Carty from Killowen Distillery as we tasted our exclusive release from Killowen with him live, and the replay of that is available on the website. If you want to watch that replay, it's available for you to watch on storiesandsips.com. And we have two. We're going to pause the releases of our big bottles of whiskey for a few weeks while we focus on some tastings. So we've got tasting kits being assembled right now. Next up will be Waterford Distillery, which will either be in the last week of August or the first week in September, and that'll be followed by later in September or the first week in October, a blind tasting. So we have two of those kits almost ready to go. We'll be sharing dates with you in the next week. So stay tuned for that. And those will be shipping to you as a member if you would like to have them. We'll ship them to all those members who want them. So if you're not yet a member of the Stories and Sips Whiskey Club, we would love you to join us, storiesandsips.com or storiesandsips.com/club. And that's how we can bring our great whiskies to you. All right. Next up, what have we got, Lauren? All right, Lauren has frozen on me there. She'll be back in a second. We are going to focus next on the best whiskey bars in Cork. And when I say best whiskey bars in Cork, I'm really talking about three things. One is bars that have whiskey, which is all of the bars. The second thing is bars that have whiskey but are also a bit of crack for a specific reason. And the third thing is bars that specialize in whiskey. So we're going to focus on all three of those tonight. And we're going to give Lauren a chance to join back in. Let me just, she's dropped off. She'll tune back in there in a second. All right. Here she comes. There she is. She's back.
For an IT support is going fantastic, as everyone can see.
We're going to have to start a GoFundMe for some kind of pay the electricity bill in Lauren's house. Help Lauren pay the bills.
I don't understand what happens. My Wi-Fi is fine. The laptop's plugged in, charged. All the updates are off. No idea.
Look, the good news is we're actually not letting anybody down, because nobody would mistake this for a professional setup on a Sunday night.
No, and no one's paying for it either, which is the massive plus.
It's great value. It's great value. It is great value. Although I'm beginning to question its value even at £0 at this stage. But in any case, we're not letting it aside down, because there was never a side that was up there.
There was never a side. Exactly. Right. I'm keeping up with what you had established.
Okay. So before we were rudely interrupted by your departure, I was talking about how there were three types of bars that we're covering tonight. One is bars that have whiskey, which is all of them. And so that's one thing. Like, there's no bar in Ireland that doesn't have whiskey. And there's no bar in Cork that doesn't have great Irish whiskey from Cork. The second type of bar we're covering is bars that have whiskey but are also a bit of crack for various reasons.
Yeah.
And the third type of bar is a bar that perhaps specializes in whiskey, and there's not many of those. There's loads of bars that have whiskey, quite a few bars that have the bit of crack, and you couldn't even fill one hand with the bars that specialize in whiskey. All right. So first, we must establish where Cork is. And it's very important we do that. In Cork, we're very proud. We call ourselves the Rebel County, and the county of Cork is Ireland's largest county. Very easy to find on the map. It's the one that says Cork, and you'll notice that everywhere else in Ireland just says not Cork. Those are our Cork colours, lovely red and white, and we wear them proudly on our sporting jerseys. And you might see people, if you visit Cork, wearing T-shirts that say People's Republic of Cork. It's almost like, and sometimes there's a little white star over that proclamation. And that white star is almost like a kind of a communist state of Cork in many ways. But we think of our own People's Republic anyway. And we're very proud. Like we think we have a unique position in Ireland, really. The Cork people have both an inferiority and a superiority complex all rolled into one. We know we're better than most of Ireland, but we are kind of not even sure of ourselves within our county sometimes. But that's where Cork is. Cork County, the biggest county, stretches from the Waterford border to the east all the way down to the Kerry border in the west, and no greater county will you ever find. Don't bother. As soon as you fly into Ireland, leave the airport, leave Dublin, leave Shannon, and just drive to Cork and spend your holiday and your dollars there. That's all we ask. Not more than that.
Well, we just end the Shebeen there. That's all everyone needs to know. Just go to Cork, find your way.
Steve wants to know when are we going to make that into a shirt. Steve, the joke is on you, because that is how this all started. It is a shirt. It's a famous shirt, and it's a famous poster in Cork. And this design is actually protected. It is owned by a design company. They came up with this, and you can buy a T-shirt. You can buy Cork, not Cork T-shirts. So Google them, hairybaby.com. You'll find it. hairybaby.com, which is the best name ever for a...
I did not know that was protected. I was going to say jump on Etsy or something, and you could probably get them from an art design. It's protected. That's mad.
Hey, well, it's a copyrighted design, you know. Somebody made this. It's not that anyone can just rock on and own it. But you go to hairybaby.com, you can buy it. Okay, so that establishes where we are. Now, for the purposes of tonight, we're going to make ourselves a little bit smaller here so we can put this up a little bit bigger. So Cork City itself is the biggest city in the county. It's the second biggest city in Ireland. And even though it's the second biggest city, it's only got about 230 or 240,000 people in the whole city. And for some of you, that's a town in Cork or in Ireland. That's massive by. And 230,000 people is huge. Cork City itself is on the River Lee, and there's kind of two tributaries really of the Lee that kind of meet together, and the city is really built on an island in the middle of the two tributaries of the river. And we talk about the history of Cork forever. Tonight's not the night. We'll talk about that when we get there on the whiskey bus in 2 weeks' time. But Cork City is full of pubs, it's full of restaurants, it's full of bars, it's a bustling city centre. There's a lot going on. The bars are a great way to start your day, have a pint in the middle of the day, a drop of whiskey, end your day. But there's lots of other things to do. I visited 2 places during the week that I would recommend to anyone visiting Cork. And I'm going to add it to our list of recommendations for the downtime during the whiskey bus. And one is the Butter Museum. Now, believe it or not, this is one of the top TripAdvisor destinations in Cork, a museum dedicated to butter. And we take butter very seriously in Ireland, but we take it even more seriously in Cork because for many, many years, Cork had the world's largest butter exchange. For decades and decades, back in the 17 and 1800s, all the way up to the early 1900s, horses and carts full of cream were brought in from the fields in what are called the milk roads from Killarney, from Macroom, from Kenmare into Cork, bringing cream so that butter could be made in Cork. And it was shipped out all over the world. And the Butter Museum does an amazing job of telling the story of butter, how it's related to Cork, the Coopers who made the barrels, the firkins that contained the barrel or contained the butter, and the connection to the whiskey history, barrel making. Fantastic tour, butter making in the Butter Museum. Just go visit the Butter Museum. Best €5 you can ever spend in Cork, I can tell you. The second thing to visit, you have to go there, by the way. You have to go there.
I've heard all about it. Like, I've genuinely seen TikToks and everything about it. I've just never been. €5 a steal. Oh
my God, it's a great video, great tour. 2 floors, all these old butter wrappers, all the old wax wrappers. And it basically charts the growth of Kerrygold. So the origin of Kerrygold and its export all around the world to be the number 2 butter brand in America after Land of Lakes. Can you imagine? And it's just amazing. It's an amazing, amazing tour. I am getting to the whiskey bars. It's coming. The second thing is the Rebel City Distillery. Rebel City Distillery is Cork's only distillery. It's in the city centre of Cork. And they don't produce whiskey yet, but they produce amazing gin and amazing absinthe. Ireland's only absinthe is produced in the Rebel City Distillery in the old Ford factory, where all the Ford cars and tractors sold in Ireland from 1917 up to 1984 were produced in the Ford factory in Cork. So Rebel City Distillery is worth a visit as well. Quick question, is the English market worth a visit? 100% you have to go visit the English market. It should be top of the list. Amazing, amazing, amazing. All right, let's move on from this. I can take any questions on Cork culture and heritage at a later point in the evening, but let us get started with my first recommendation of the night. Lauren, have you ever been here, first of all?
I have, yes, only once though, and it was about 4 years ago for a very brief visit during a team meeting in Cork at the time. We called in here, and that was it. It's a great bar.
Mutton Lane is one of my favourite bars in Cork. Quite a few of the bars we're going to mention tonight are actually owned by the same man. His name is Benny McCabe, and Benny McCabe grew up in the pub business in Cork. His parents owned one of the bars we're going to talk about later, and he has a pub empire that is the biggest pub empire in Ireland outside of Dublin. He has, I think it's 18 pubs in Cork and a brewery and plans for a distillery. And his whiskey connection, beyond the fact that he sells between his 18 pubs probably more whiskey than, any other group, his whiskey connection, his daughter, Saoirse McCabe, was Jameson's brand ambassador in Los Angeles for a few years. When I was over in the US, in Ohio, she was in LA, and she now works on PR for the brand for, they're called Heritage Pubs. Cork heritage bars or Cork heritage pubs. Mutton Lane is one of them. And one of the hallmarks of these Cork heritage pubs is that they've never been burdened with new paint. And that's an important it's an important point, because paint is wasted on a good pub. Instead, what you have is these wonderfully old, dimly lit, backlit candles under kind of backlighting, but no direct lighting. The Mutton Lane is one of them. Mutton Lane is right in the heart of the city. It's off Patrick Street, and it connects to the English market that Cheryl was asking about earlier. The English market, fantastic fresh food market in the heart of Cork City. Mutton Lane is a laneway that connects Patrick Street, the main thoroughfare of Cork, into the English market. It was one of many alleyways, that's still one of many alleyways that go into the English market from all around the city. And Mutton Lane is so called because it's where sheep and pigs would have been driven down that laneway to get to the English market, where they would have been slaughtered and sold by the butchers there in the English market. For many years, and this Mutton Lane dates back to the 1800s. It's considered one of Ireland's, or one of Cork's oldest pubs. And it held the record for a long time as being the bar in Ireland that sold more whiskey per square foot than any other bar, because the butchers and the farmers would leave a whiskey behind in that bar for their helper, maybe their assistant, the young boy. I wonder how old he was getting his whiskey, but 12, 13, 14, he'd been stood a little glass of whiskey maybe back in the day, and the butchers and the farmers left the whiskey for them in there. So they had one for themselves, they had one for the helper, and they just put so much money in behind the bar there after a good day of driving the sheep and the lambs into Mutton Lane. Fabulous mural down Mutton Lane, and you'll see the big sign up on the left there for Beamish. So you get a good pint of Beamish in there. I enjoyed a couple of Beamish in there last week. Lovely creamy pints. Fabulous mural leads the way down there. It is a dark, dimly lit pub with probably one of the best snugs in the city. I think as soon as you walk in the door, you just turn left, and if there's people sitting in there already, grab them by the scruff of their neck and throw them out so that you can take their seats. But it's the best, probably the best snug in the city. And that mural actually really, you can, if you stand by that mural, you can. There's about 100 stories happening. And any Cork man will be able to point out the various stories that are all tied to Cork at Mutton Lane. So drop in there. And they have a great whiskey selection, great. They have Gold Spot on the shelf. They have Jameson Rarest Vintage Reserve for those of you who are looking for a drop of that. And it's the cheapest in the city, even though it's €47.50 a pour. There's another bar on the corner that's charging 75 for it. So you've been, I know. So there you go. There's the tip.
So if anyone decides to take someone by the scruff of their neck out of a snug, we've got it on camera that Barry said it was okay. So if you get in trouble with the powers that be, blame Barry.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. It'll be a valid excuse in the eyes of the law, and they'll respect that. Is there much difference, Barry, in the price of a pint, like say a pint of Beamish, between bars in Cork, or not really? Not really, no. I think it's $5.50, I think. I think it's all the same, mostly the same. I don't think there's a massive difference. The difference might be probably in the pubs that I'm not going to, might be the high volume, more nightclubby style pubs, which and some of them might put their prices up in the evening too. But I haven't seen it for a lot more than $5.50. Anyway, Mutton Lane is an absolute must visit, right in the heart of the city. For those of you who are on Whiskey Bus 2, 15-minute walk from the hotel. Not even. If you're any way of a brisk walker, it's 10 minutes. And if you have a thirst on you, it's 5.
Exactly. You have to, when you look at Google Maps and it tells you the distance from where you are to a bar, just factor in the fact that you've got a thirst on you and you're likely going to power walk.
Really, you can't get lost. You really can't get lost. And now this is and we reiterate this all the time, don't we, Lauren, about the size of the pubs in Ireland are not designed for 40 people to just rock in as a group and say, table for 40, Squire. There's just no such thing. So these are things we recommend going in 2s and 4s, and any more than that, you start to make people nervous.
Exactly. They get intimidated by more than, I would say, 5 people coming through the door. I think as well, I think we even talked about this when we covered the best whiskey bars in Belfast a few weeks ago. I think what is so great about both Cork and Belfast is the accessibility of the city. Like everywhere is very walkable, and I think people really appreciate that. It puts me off if I'm in, say, Dublin, for example, and you Google a bar and you see it's a 15-minute Uber away, never mind a walk. It's a 15-minute Uber away. But Cork is nice and accessible, which is dangerous in a way because you can cover a lot more ground in an evening, but it's also great crack.
This is one of the bars that is a bar that has whiskey, but it's also got its own version of a bit of crack. Like when you walk inside, you'll see it. Don't expect any updated furniture from the last 40 years. Like they've got these leather banquettes that honestly, you sit into them and you'll sink down further than if you were being buried in the ground. If you're being lowered into the grave, you wouldn't sink as far down as you would in these banquettes. But at all the tables have little Jameson bottles with candles dripping wax for months down them. It's character. It's just pure character in there, and some great characters you'll find standing at the bar too.
Love it. I'd say that'll be a visit for sure. The Oval, one of my favorite spots. If you want a nice creamy pint of Beamish, do not even look any further than the Oval. Do not look any further. I'm so annoyed. We don't really have Beamish. This is the funny thing about Beamish. It's not as consumed in the north as it is obviously in Cork and in various other locations in the south of Ireland. And it's not a great pint up north in Belfast especially, but really because the lines aren't used as much. But in here, oh my days, I was in here the time I was with you, Barry, when I was last sort of summertime, when I was down for a tasting and met you for a pint in there. That was my first time in that bar. And
I'd heard that you were never there. Yeah, hey? I got word that you were never there, so I said, right, you want a good pint of Beamish, follow me.
Because I think I actually had said to you, Beamish in Belfast isn't fantastic, just because it isn't drank as much, the lines aren't used, it just doesn't flow as well. And then you changed my mind completely. Fantastic bar. So the Oval is named, of course, for its beautiful interior ceiling, of course, shaped like an oval. It is the central feature of the bar. The venue itself was actually designed by an Edinburgh-based firm of architects on behalf of Beamish and Crawford Brewery, which of course previously operated across the street. So Beamish and Crawford was the brewery company based in Cork. They were established in 1792 by William Beamish and William Crawford, William Squared, on the site of an already existing porter brewery in the cities. And it was once the largest brewery in Ireland. And correct me if I'm wrong, Barry, I think it was the largest up until Guinness in 1833.
Yeah, I believe it was.
Yeah. Which is incredible. So a great kind of historic little piece of Cork there. So Beamish and Crawford operated there until about 2009. They had various owners, of course, across the years, Heineken being the most recent. Beamish is still produced in the city, in Cork, of course, but it's at a nearby Heineken operated facility. So the Oval itself then, as I said, it was created on behalf of Beamish and Crawford. So it's still in its original condition. And I think it's the only pub in Cork that's listed, Barry. I'm not sure. I was doing a wee bit of research on it to find that information. Yeah, that's true.
I think it's not technically a listed building, but it was mentioned as one of the most important buildings. So like it faces what you're seeing between the bar here and the old Beamish brewery. These are actually, and you see how familiar or how similar they look with their the ornate designs and the black and white coloring. They're actually facing each other. It's hard to get in the photograph, but they're actually facing each other across the road from each other, and both of them date back to the 1700s. And the Oval was the closest place to the brewery you're ever going to get a pint, which meant the shortest delivery route possible. So you're getting it as close to the source as possible.
And it's got a great whiskey collection. They have an open fire. I was just about to mention the kind of lovely red interiors, the leather interiors there as well, and a good peat fire. So you're often in winter, you're met by the smell of peat, sit by the bar, have a good whiskey, and have a cracking pint of Beamish. One of my favourites in Cork.
Lovely spot. That's where that video I put at the start there of the Beamish being poured was taken in the Oval. Over there beyond the candle on the right hand side. I was sitting against the wall facing the bar and drinking my pint of Beamish. Also a heritage pub owned by Benny McCabe. So now we're 2 for 2 already with his pubs. He'll have a few more mentions yet tonight. But again, you'll meet every character of person here, from student to pensioner. And that's what I think makes these bars very special too.
That's what I was going to say. I even remember when we were in there, nobody paid a blind bit of notice to you. It was great. Everyone just minds their own business. As you said, loads of different characters. Everyone's just in there for a great pint. It's a fantastic spot. It really is. Grab a bar stool. In the early afternoon, you won't be troubled by too many people at that time of day. Oh,
no,
brilliant.
And they have a great selection of whiskey, as you were saying, Lauren. They have their own Powers single cask, which is a part of which is a release more broadly for the Heritage Pub group, and that's still available. I think it's a 16-year-old single cask, which you can get hold of in any of the Heritage Pubs of Cork. They also have great Waterford selection, believe it or not. They've got a fantastic, as do all of these pubs tonight, great Cork selection, fantastic Midleton selection of all the spots, all the redbreasts, all the Midleton Very Rares, and old ones too, like Jameson Gold and things like that. So it's well worth checking out.
All the memorabilia on the walls is fantastic as well. Like I remember, you go up to the toilets and it's just lined with beautiful old tin signs, old photos. It's just a little time capsule in the middle of Cork.
Tony wondering how much an Uber is from Dublin to Cork. Tony, don't take an Uber from Dublin to Cork. It'll cost you about. You'd be cheaper to fly. It would cost you about €400 or €500, I'd say, or more. There's buses door to door from Dublin to Cork for about €19.
Train's even better. Get the train. Yeah, it's a lovely train ride, actually.
And the train ride will take you right up to the city centre into Cork. If you take a train from Dublin to Cork, you'll get into the city centre, and one of the first pubs you'll happen upon if you walk down McCurtain Street and get to the end of McCurtain Street and go down to Coburg Street is this pub here, Sinead.
Go on. Why is it called Sinead, Barry?
Well, Sinead is Irish for that's it. And it's called That's It because you'll notice to the right it's located beside a funeral home. That's it. Ta-da! My favorite anecdote in Cork. Sinead, that's it.
I think this just perfectly positions the Irish humour. We don't take anything seriously whatsoever. And it's very ironic, and it just basically sums us up, I think.
It does. Now, this is, you're going to tell us a little bit about Sinead.
I am indeed. So it was, believe it or not, voted one of the best places in the world, allegedly, to spend St. Patrick's Day. So they have non-stop traditional music 7 days a week, and they claim that they had music from the 1950s, playing trad music every night before it was cool. So it was first opened its doors in 1889. And it has always been kind of a very intriguing sort of spot. Again, similar to the Oval, a very wide sort of clientele of people, all kind of characters, they hail from every sort of background. They claim as well that they don't tolerate any egos. So if anyone has an ego, leave it at the door. And it was, I read a really interesting fact about it as well, that it was actually, what it was called, or the street, Coburg Street, where the bar is, was once called Madden's Field. So it kind of links to what you were saying earlier, Barry, about Mutton Lane. It was an overnight holding pen for cattle, for live animals, and before they were exported to England. So the street kind of, as you said earlier as well, it narrows towards the end of the street. And the walls upstairs used to be a barber's as well, which I thought was quite cool. So it's had a few different sort of purposes over the years, if you like. And it was also, I think, the upper floors served as accommodation, and it was also a saddle makers at one point as well. So really, really interesting, I found. And the old chairs, I think the old barber's chairs are still in place upstairs.
Upstairs, yeah. And this is another heritage pub, same group. And this is the original one. This is Benny McCabe's parents ran this. The McCabe family ran Sinead. They eventually handed it over to Benny McCabe, who has maintained it as his parents ran it. And Lauren's right, talking about like no egos in there. There are serious musicians who play in there, and they like serious traditional Irish music, Irish musicians who are playing trad music 7 nights a week. And while they're very giving of their music and their time, there's no respect given to somebody who might stand up and start singing or like trying to be the leader. It's kind of or somebody to stand out and be a hero. It's about the group playing the session. And if people start talking, they're like, you'll be shushed, but in the right way, because it's when the music is playing, you want all eyes to be diverted to the players in reverence of what they're bringing to us, because they're telling us a story musically and we want to pay attention to it. So just note that if you are going in there and you notice nobody else is talking, that is not the space cleared for you to start screaming. Rather, it's to join in the silence and enjoy the music with a good whiskey in your hand.
It's a respect thing though as well, isn't it? It's the same with any kind of event. If there's a public speaker or you're at a whiskey tasting, you people will shush anyone who is talking over the act or the person who is supposed to be the center of attention. So fair enough.
Yeah. I do like a bit of shush. I'm a big fan of the shushers. And I like to be a shusher myself, because when somebody is giving their talent, I want to hear it. I want to see it. I want to understand it. And I want to be one with it. I don't want to hear in my ear somebody reading out their shopping list or talking on the phone or whatever it is.
I actually think that provides a really nice atmosphere, though, if everyone is there for a collective sort of respect for the artist, rather than everyone. Yeah.
I think so. And so anyway, Sinead is a 5-minute walk from the Metropole Hotel, where many of you are staying who are on Whiskey Bus 2, which is amazing. So we will have to end up in here one of the nights. Not all of us, because you'll notice when you walk inside, there's about space for about 3 dogs and about 2 men and women, and that's it. But it's quite tight near the music. But Johnny says, check your ego next door. Funnily enough, the bar next door is called the Corner House. And the Corner House is a spot where I got 2 of the 3 lock-ins of my life in. Now, that's not this is not maybe they're past the statute of limitations. They can't be prosecuted for serving after hours. But the Corner House is where I got a lock-in. And the first ever group I brought to Ireland before the Whiskey Bus, 11 people unofficially, we brought them to the Corner House. And lo and behold, they got a lock-in their first ever trip to Ireland. And I tell you what, we fell out of the door at 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was the best night. And musicians were inside. They rolled down the blinds. They locked the doors. And, sure, by the end of the night, we were all exchanging numbers and addresses with everyone in the bar. And we were all the best of friends. And next morning, we looked at those numbers, right, threw them in the bin. But we had a great night anyway.
There's genuinely nothing like an Irish lock-in. There is nothing like it. You feel, especially when you're one of the people that gets locked in, you feel kind of a sense of importance. You're like me. You wanted me to stay here. You don't want me to leave with everybody else. It's great crack. We might have to. I'm not saying for this Whiskey Bus. Don't hold me to this. Anyone who's joining us, we might have to create somehow our own lock-in in person at some stage. I'm down for that. No. Everyone else is going to agree with me.
If you've seen our itinerary that starts every morning around 8 o'clock, I'm not going to be the last man standing. I'm not going to be the hero. No.
No, not this Whiskey Bus, but maybe at a later date, somewhere in the future, we'll create our own lock-in in person. We'll create our own stream.
We look forward to that itinerary. Tyrone wanting to know if there are any popular sports teams in Cork. Yeah, there are. Cork themselves are a sports team. So Cork City for soccer, Cork for hurling, Cork for Gaelic football. So hurling and Gaelic football, the indigenous Irish Gaelic athletic sports, and Cork is a big player in both hurling and mostly hurling, and to a smaller degree football. And what else from Cork? I mean, yeah, it's mostly what we would call county teams. So Cork County. Richard says we need a lock in the last night in Cork as we're checking out at 4 a.m. Richard, that is something you can discuss with the bar or with the hotel bar. And depending on how much you tip the night manager in the Metropole will determine whether you get a lock in there or not, I'd say.
Listen, Troy did it last year. He stayed up until about, I think it was about 3:30, 4, and then just got his bus straight down to Dublin to catch a flight. So it's been done.
This is the inside of Sinead, and you'll notice it's you might not be able to tell it apart from Mutton Lane or from the Oval. Again, they use the same paint.
Hasn't been painted since 1980. All that lovely distinctive red hue. No,
Yeah.
everyone, you're not so drunk that you've managed to stay in the same bar. It's just the same paint.
I think they got a good deal on maroon paint and empty Jameson bottles to hold the candles.
They've got some candles off Amazon for cheap, and they put them in all the bars.
They would never be accused of wasting any money on decor in these pubs.
They've spent enough money in decorating the walls with memorabilia.
Next up is a bar that I doubted, or I kind of questioned whether I should include it or not. It's the first of the bars that's outside of the Heritage Pub Group, and it's located upstairs in a very busy bar in the centre of Cork on Oliver Plunkett Street. And Oliver Plunkett Street runs almost parallel to Patrick Street, the main thoroughfare in Cork City. And halfway down Oliver Plunkett Street, you'll find the bar called The Oliver Plunkett. And upstairs, they have a bar called the Frisky Whiskey Bar. And this is a bar that was put together in response to the growing interest in whiskey in Ireland. But the Oliver Plunkett caters mainly to a tourist market. So what I would say here with the Oliver Plunkett, which is the main building and kind of the downstairs bar, and the Frisky Whiskey upstairs, and there you'll see it. It's a beautiful looking bar. Like, it's stunning. But if you want to get somebody to explain to you the difference between two different styles of pot still, or help you find your favorite new 14-year-old single cask, this isn't the bar for you. You'll have people in here that won't know what you mean by neat when you ask for something without ice. That's the challenge. And I say that with respect, just that there isn't the focus on whiskey so much as the focus on the decor. And I think that separates this place. It's more contrived than the others, but they have a selection of whiskey, but they're not going to have the rare whiskies or the unusual whiskies.
I feel like, I don't know if this is true, Barry, but I was in Cork in 2019. That would have been pre-COVID, obviously. It was the last time I was in it before the pandemic. And I even felt since then, to when I was in Cork again for the first time pre-COVID or post-COVID, it turned very, very club-like. I don't know, like, it just seems like a very club vibe, like somewhere you'd go if you wanted like a Jameson ginger and lime, which is fine. Every bar has its purpose.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean when you're saying you were kind of reluctant to put it on the list because, I don't think it would be the obvious kind of whiskey bar, even though it does have a decent.
They have music. Like, they have great bands 7 nights a week. I'll tell you this though, if you happen to be a young single girl going in there, God help you, because you'd be mauled by all the young Irish guys in there. Looking for tourists to ask out for an old drink or a bite to eat. It's just a meat market at night downstairs. It's like I couldn't in good conscience say go there for best whiskey. But if during, like, outside, they have lovely seating outside. So on a summer's day, it's nice to sit outside with a whiskey and watch Cork go by, because it's on a pedestrian street. So it's nice to just watch the old city walk by you. But at night, I don't think it's our cup of tea, really.
No, I remember walking back from dinner in Cork. I think it was maybe last year, and it was like rave music blasting out the doors, people coming in heels and going up in dresses and things. So probably not where we want to go, especially in a few weeks.
Now, there's one more like that I left off the list completely, and it's called the Bodega. And the Bodega is another heritage-owned bar, but it is more modern, and it is listed, or they list themselves as one of the largest whiskey bars in Cork. I've been in there in a whiskey capacity twice, and nobody knew what I was talking about when I asked for a redbreast cask strength. Nobody knew what I was talking about when I pointed to a certain spot whiskey behind the bar. They had to have it explained to them. I suppose, like a lot of the hospitality industry, there are bars that are high volume that struggle to find staff, or they don't train the staff. I've always been disappointed by the Bodega. So I'd say avoid the Bodega, avoid Frisky Whiskey Bar, unless you want to just see a beautifully put together version of what a corporate-looking whiskey bar can look like, maybe.
Yeah, like it's gorgeous. I mean, it has a beautiful aesthetic with the barrels up there and everything. The lighting's lovely. Like, and at the same time, as I'm sure many of you know, education is the most important thing for bartenders, especially for those who maybe only entered the industry kind of post pandemic. And if they, I mean, if they haven't been told the information, they're never going to know. You know, so
this next one is off the beaten path in terms of tourist recommendations, yet it is right in the heart of the city, and it is one that I keep forgetting about, yet every time I remember it, I'm so delighted that I remember that it's there. It's the Welcome Inn, and it is an extremely welcoming place. It is located in Parnell Place, which is beside the bus station in Cork, and that is just over the river from the Shelburne bar, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But the Welcome Inn, and Lauren, and we've never been there. I'll have to take you there when we're in Cork for the whiskey bus. They are a early house, which means you can get a pint or a whiskey there from 7:30 a.m. in the morning. So early houses are bars in. So the Irish liquor licensing, the alcohol licensing system, like every country, is very antiquated and is based on it's just laws that have held over for sometimes hundreds of years. And back when fishing was a big part of Cork's industry and employment, there were fishermen who would come in off the boats at all hours of the day and night, and sure, didn't they deserve a drink no matter what time they arrived in, as if that was the only thing they could have. But they would have established early house licenses, maybe one or two per city, in areas where you had shift workers, or those who worked odd hours, like fishing or something else. And the early house was a very sought after license, because it meant you could open from 7 to 7:30 in the morning, or sometimes even earlier, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, trade all day long. The Welcome Inn is one such place. It is zero ego. And this bar works in shifts. In other words, people come in like clockwork for their morning pints. They're gone. And then a whole other group of people come in for their afternoon pints. A whole other group of people come in for their evening whiskies or pints. And it is a shift run bar. Like, it's just like people move like a group into the Welcome Inn, out again. And it's amazing to see. But they have an amazing whiskey selection. And every single whiskey is tagged with the price on a little tag behind the bar. I think they might have, there's some of their whiskies there. They have rare whiskies. I spotted a bottle of Bushmills in there that was bottled for Snow Patrol, when Snow Patrol must have played in Dublin or Belfast.
No way. That's insanely rare. Yeah, so that would have been about 2014. So there was when Diageo owned Bushmills. They owned Bushmills from 2005 until 2014, pre-Cuervo days, pre-Proximo days. And they used to have this thing called Bushmills Live. And they did it from 2012 to 2014. They had Snow Patrol headline, the 1975 headlined, and of Monsters and Men. If anyone's heard of them, they have one really kind of distinct song. And that was bottled for them. So I have no idea how they got a hold of that bottle.
They have quite a few bottles that are not for sale too. So up high, so out of picture there on the left-hand side, there's a ceiling level cabinet. And up at ceiling level, you'll see all these rare old Irish whiskies, and they won't sell them to you, but they'll happily talk to you about them. And if you get the owner in there during the day, he'll talk away about his whiskies. But they have everything, like every Irish whiskey that comes out, they stock it in there. It's really amazing. And what you don't see in this picture, to the right-hand side there, is a little snug. So to the right is the door that leads you out onto the street. But if you walked in off the street and you just looked to your right before you got to the main bar, you'd have the snug. But I say snug in the kindest possible way. What I really mean is 2 empty Murphy's kegs and a plank of wood. And that's the snug.
Raw, authentic, love that. And fitting with the city that they're in.
It's perfect. Just a plank of wood. You sit on that and you could have great chats about everything that's going on in Cork and people sitting at the bar. I've never been at a bar where I've been made to feel more part of the community that's in there, or more welcome, forgive the pun, for the Welcome Inn. But every time I've been in there, somebody at the bar has turned to me to start up a conversation. And you don't always get that, but it's lovely to find.
Do you know what though? The plank of wood is fine. All you need is somewhere to put your backside and you're grand. As long as you have somewhere to rest yourself, you're fine. As Greg said, a splinter for a memento. That's all you need. And what do you know what? One of the best things in the world is people watching. That's one of my favorite things to do, whether it's with the coffee during the day or with a pint at night. The best thing is just people watching. It's great. And all you need somewhere to put your backside and you're grand.
This is a 7-minute walk from the Metropole Hotel. It's right in the city centre of Cork, really close. You just walk over the bridge, over the river from Metropole, and you'll get to the Welcome Inn. Most of the bars we've mentioned so far, in fact, except for the Oliver Plunkett, none of them serve food. And there's a reason for that. The Welcome Inn on their website has a lovely line. I need to pull this up here because the Welcome Inn says... I love how they spin it. They said, we're an early house. We open daily at 7 a.m. You're always assured of a warm welcome. We still believe in having a chat with our customers, and we don't do food so we can concentrate on the quality of our drink.
I saw that earlier. Brilliant. I love that. It's like, you don't need food just for the drink.
Yeah, like it's, the height of pub food in Ireland when I was growing up was a bag of crisps or a little snack bar, and that was it. The pink snack or the purple snack, that was it. And Absolutely. That was pub food. A few sandwiches maybe.
All you need is some scampi fries or some bacon rashers, a packet of potato or some peanuts. Keep the thirst on you. That's all you need.
Ireland is not a 24-hour nation. It's something you're just going to have to get used to when you visit it, is that while there are some bars that are open from 7 a.m. till midnight, you're not going to find your all the time open convenience stores. You're not going to find, very rare, it's very hard to find. Even the city centre of Cork, you won't find a 24-hour convenience store in the city centre of Cork. You'll find gas stations, petrol stations outside the city that will have a little window that will serve you, but that's it. Cheryl talking about early breakfast. The only place you'll get any food at 5 a.m. is if the night porter in your hotel will put together a plate or something for you. There's no restaurant serving at 5 or 6 or even 7 in the morning. Like, Ireland starts at 8 or 9. It doesn't start at 6 or 7, does it?
McDonald's might be the next place at like 7 for workers if you want a breakfast bap or something like that. That's honestly about it. Yeah, because Cheryl and Greg earlier were saying they're used to kind of 4 a.m. closing times. That just isn't a thing in Ireland. I don't know if it's the same in Cork, but Belfast certainly not. Only very recently was there kind of a sort of campaign to keep the bars open a little bit later, and later is 2 a.m. never mind 1. So it's just not a thing. It doesn't happen.
I want to share a little. This is the website for the Welcome Inn, which gives you a nice little overview of the pub itself, the characters that are in there. That's the size of the bar there.
Sign, brilliant.
Old Murphy, the Murphy's, Beamish on draft, of course. Great whiskey selection, great characters. Old Cork, my favourite phrase, old Cork. Just the old characters of Cork that you'll find in there.
Oh, brilliant. Do you know what I love about most of the bars we've spoken about tonight as well, is they're not really present on social media. They don't kind of put themselves out there. It's those really traditional bars that rely on their kind of their regulars, and I love that. There's something so authentic and so typically Irish about it that it's just fantastic.
If you've just joined, you're very welcome to the Shebeen. We're in Cork Bar tonight. We're diving into all things Cork, Beamish, Murphy's, whiskey bars, a bit of crack, butter museums and distilleries, all included tonight at no extra cost. If you're enjoying the crack, click the like button. If we don't get any likes, we completely understand it, because this is not a professionally put together operation. We might have sound issues, technical issues, so we understand if we don't get the likes or the views.
We'll accept it. We're here for it. I feel like this might be a good time to tell the story I was talking about earlier about Paul. That did make me laugh. In fairness, I'll never live that down, will I?
Go on, tell us a Cork story.
So now I'll have to clear my throat here to put on a good Cork accent. So Paul Costello, which many of you know, he was on Barry's live stream twice, 2 weeks in a row, actually. Singing, yes. So he was on for on Paddy's Day with Roisin, and then the week after with myself when I was down in Cork for Cork Whiskey Fest. So at Whiskey Live, Paul came up to the stand, the Bushmill stand, and he asked me for what I thought was a pen. So he asked me for a pin. Or what I thought was a pin. He asked me for a pin. I thought it was a pin, like a little lapel pin. It was actually a pen. So it turns out that eyes become ease when you're in Cork, and he will never let me live that down, and he reminds me of it every time I see him and every time I talk to him. Those on the whiskey bus in a few weeks' time, I will tell it in a better Cork accent when I see you in person with a few more whiskeys in me.
You'll meet people in Cork and you'll wonder if they're speaking English at all. And I remember I tell the story how, like, I grew up outside the city. I grew up in Cove, which doesn't have as strong a Cork accent. But I remember coming home from school when I was about 7 or 8 years of age and saying to my parents that we just had hurling training. So hurling is the Irish sport. I said, we just had hurling training. We've got a new coach. His name is Mr. Casey. And they said, oh, okay, that's very good. Where's Mr. Casey from? And I said, I think he's from France. And they said, France? A French hurling coach is teaching you hurling? I said, yeah, definitely. He's got a French accent, everything. No, Mr. Casey wasn't from France at all. Mr. Casey was from Cork. He just had a very thick Cork accent that I couldn't understand. So I thought he was French. He was like, you get the ball, you know, by right. You get the ball, you know this, you hit it, all right. It's not 45. And I thought he was talking in French because I couldn't make out a word of it. But I've only come to learn later in life that he had just the most beautiful of Cork accents. Beautiful.
France, Cork, same thing, you know.
When Paul Costello was on with us earlier, do you remember when he was on with you? Was the week after he was on with Roisin, I think. We created this character, Spud. And Tony was asking about him. He's still alive. He's still going, but he's looking a bit worse for wear now. He's after growing all kinds of appendages.
Oh dear. Shorty doesn't look great now. He looks a wee bit hairy.
I know, but sure, look, we all get a bit hairy in our old age. It's just part of growing up.
We'll let him off with that one. No, Paul will never let me live that down. I honestly think the Cork accent's fantastic, although Kerry is on another level of difficult sometimes. Like I remember when I still worked in the distillery at Bushmills, I had the loveliest, God bless his soul, he was the loveliest wee man from Kerry, and he was chatting away to me, and it was kind of like that, the penguins in Madagascar, just smiling wave boys. I was like, yep, you keep chatting to me. I have no idea what you're asking me.
Yeah, I mean, you'd hear that Cork accent like when you visit, you can't avoid it. And there's something very reassuring about a Cork accent. I remember, like, in all the years I lived overseas, like I left Cork when I was 18. So for 20 plus years, I was living outside of Cork. And anytime I came home to Cork, whether it was on the plane and you got on an Aer Lingus flight to Cork and you heard the air hostess saying, can I get you anything there, love? And you'd be like, oh, yes, the Cork accent.
I'm home.
I'm home. There's just something very reassuring about it. And it's a bit like I've often joked with you, Lauren, like up in the north when somebody says, can I get you a wee drink? Can I get you a wee drink? Or would you like the wee bill? Everything is wee, you know? And yet it's all the same size, confusingly. But it's a lovely informality. And I think the Cork accent is the same thing. There's nobody would ever say there's anything pretentious about a Cork accent.
No, but I love that though. I feel like there's no airs or graces in the best way. And it's like when you came up to Belfast, the wee thing, that just lets people know that they're comfortable in your presence and they see you as a friend. It's like, put your wee card in the wee card machine there, or do you want a wee bag with that? Like it's just a very homely thing. And I think you mentioned about the flight. That's how you always know you're on the right plane home, is when you hear your own accent and you're like, I'm going the right way, I'm at the right gate. I think that, Larry, I think you've got more Cork since you've come home, and I want to see what everyone else thinks. I think you've got more Cork, and it's not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. You should always keep your accent, but I think everyone will agree when you've got slightly more Cork.
I have, but you see, I learned a long time ago that it's my job to make sure that people understand me. So when I was living in the United States full time, I knew that if I was to talk just in my Cork accent completely and at that speed and with my colloquialisms from Cork, I'd be committed to an insane asylum. And so I had to make sure that people could understand me. And so I balanced out the accent a bit, made it a little bit more neutral just so that people could understand me. And that was my gift to America, you know. But now that I've come home, I am definitely picking up the local dialect a bit more.
You're around more Irish people who will understand you, so you don't have to.
if I ever start talking in a kind of a nasally old man way, like in a sing-song voice, it's like, and Jesus, down there now yesterday, they get lovely pinty Beamish, like they had lovely pints. Then I've gone too far and I need to be brought back for a bit of time in America. Like
every single time I've ever had a pint with you, you always turn into that Barry. Like that level of Cork bar every single time it happens.
On that note, let's look at the next bar that we've got coming up here. Now, this is a Cork institution, an absolute institution. This is what you're looking at here is a chemist or a pharmacy on the corner of Oliver Plunkett Street, about 1 block away from the Oliver Plunkett or the Frisky Whiskey Bar, and right in the heart of the city again. This is an institution of a bar. It is the blue building you're seeing is the old Hibernian Hotel, which was operating in Cork in the early part of the 20th century, right up to the middle of the 20th century. And the Hibernian Hotel has been shortened to the High B, Hibernian, High B, get it? And the High B now is on the floor above the chemist shop, and it is one of the most talked about bars in Cork. Not because it's winning any cocktail awards on the world stage or being lauded in the world's 50 best bars, but rather because it's where you could be having a pint with the Lord Mayor of Cork, as equally as you could be having a pint with the man who sweeps the streets outside the City Hall. And it is a place where, for many, many years, a man held court in there. Brian O'Donnell, I think, if I remember correctly, his name. And he was a legend in Cork because he was the landlord. His parents owned the Hibernian Hotel. He took it over from them when they passed away. And he ran the bar with an iron fist. You have to walk up the stairs to get to it. No mobile phones allowed inside. No acting out of the ordinary in any way that might annoy him, lest you be barred from the pub. And he barred people on the daily. Every single day, there were people barred from the High B. And it became actually a mark of almost like a rite of passage in Cork to say, I know I was barred from the High B. And I remember a friend of mine bringing me in there in the early 2000s, who himself had an experience that he walked into the bar, and on the left-hand side, he walked in, and it's really just like an old man's living room is what this bar is like. Again, no furniture shop will survive long in Cork because there's no bar spending any money in it. The old furniture is like something out of the 1950s and the flock wallpaper, but it's fantastic. But he walked in the bar, he said, and to his left was the owner, Brian, sitting there in a full-length dressing gown with a shotgun over his leg. And he was there to warn people, don't be kissing, don't be talking loud, don't be looking for change, give me the exact amount for the pint. Like all his own rules. Like he was a character in Cork. And people talk in Cork, like bar owners would talk about him as being a fellow who ran a bar in a way that none of the rest of us had the courage to do in how you dealt with customers. And he kicked more people out. I was never kicked out of there. I remember him in there. But in his later years, he retired to upstairs and he would watch the bar from upstairs through the TV. He had closed-circuit television cameras in there. If you walk in there today, you'll see there's like 20 CCTV cameras dotted in the... It's like a Las Vegas casino, you know? And he would be upstairs and every now and again you'd hear a...
Yeah.
And that was him banging on the floor to the workers below because he might have spotted a foreign couple making out by the fireplace or somebody looking at their phone, and that was the bartender's queue to look around and go, who's breaking Brian's rules in the bar? Unreal place.
I remember you telling me that about the shotgun and then him like banging the floor with the brush as if to be like, get them out. Was it not up until very recently they still didn't take cards? It was all cash?
Up until COVID, they only took cash. And when they opened, they were closed for 700 and something days during COVID. And when they opened back up, they said, we are unchanged except for one thing. We now take cards. And that was it. That was the only change in the bar. And it's a fantastic place. So I was lucky enough a couple of months ago to hold a private whiskey tasting in the High B with the Cork Whiskey Society, who invited me in to share our Stories and Sips Whiskey Club bottlings, of which they had purchased one of each over the years. And we held a tasting for the Cork Whiskey Society in the High B. We squeezed about 45 people into a space designed for 4. And we poured all of the whiskies from the Stories and Sips Whiskey Club inside the High B in a remarkable night where they, for the first time in their history, they closed the doors to the general public so that we could have our whiskey tasting in there. His daughter, Rachel, allowed us the privilege of being in there. So fair play to the Cork Whiskey Society for pulling that off. But it was a particular privilege in my life that I could go in there and talk out loud in a bar that doesn't like you raising your voice above the volume of a pint being poured, typically.
Is the phone rule still a thing? Because I feel like nowadays people are so, like, your phone's attached to your hand, basically. So I feel like you're constantly checking your phone, looking for your phone. I feel like in there you would have to make such a subconscious effort to not look at it or bring it out.
I don't know how they enforce it today, in the sense of, like, back then he was the enforcer. And I don't know if the bar staff today would care so much. But like you see the sign up there, we'll put it up a little bit bigger on the screen. Like on the right-hand side, it's very clearly saying underneath the High B bar, it says, notice no mobile phones allowed in the High B bar. Like no mobile phones. And it's actually an interesting bar from a toilet perspective, because the toilets are not connected to the bar. They're in a different floor. You have to go out, leave the bar, and you might think you're in a time machine in this old toilet that... Aaron, look out! This is a family show. There's no point going into the details of the toilets. But in any way, it's different. It's very different.
I've never been. I'll definitely have to make a point of going there.
We're going there. That tasting is available on podcast, by the way. Go to Whiskey Chats podcast on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and look for the Cork Whiskey Society tasting with Barry Chandler, and you'll find that night. It was a great night, and there was more crack had. I mean, I got some great photographs I need to pull up from that night and share them, but it was just a fantastic night with people who'd never tried our whiskies before getting to try them, but also just to do it in the hallowed grounds of the High B. It got so hot in there with 45 people. I thought the wallpaper was going to start peeling off the wall. We were opening all the windows out onto the Oliver Plunkett Street in the hopes that it would quieten down, or it would cool down a bit out there.
Did they give you special permission to record it that night, or what was?
No, I don't think Laurie asked. I think he just threw an old microphone onto me, and he said, "Off you go. I'll edit this later." I said,
"That was some podcast. That was like a 2-hour podcast, if I remember correctly."
Oh, 3 maybe.
At least.
Now back to you.
Speaking of Stories and Sips, I've just poured a little Stories and Sips Stoneville, so I'm fitting with what you were just chatting about there. Beautiful whiskey. Anyway, on to, I think this is our final bar, if I remember correctly, the Shelburne. I do not think this bar needs an introduction. It is one of my favourite bars in the whole of Ireland. Every single time I'm in Cork, I make a beeline for this bar. I love the staff. I love everything about it, the atmosphere, their whiskey, their pints. And it's only across the road from the Metropole. Anyone joining us in a few weeks for Whiskey Bus 2, it is quite literally across the road.
No, right beside it. Same side, right beside it.
Yes. Oh, yeah, it is same side. It is same side, of course. Massive shout out to the guys there. Mark, Rory, Tom, Ula, everyone there. The staff are so knowledgeable. If you want any information on any whiskey, if you want any whiskey basically in Ireland, this is your spot to go. So they have, I believe, the largest selection of Irish whiskey in any pub across Ireland. I know there's been a few figures thrown around recently about how many bottles of Irish whiskey they actually have. I believe that's now up to 400. According to the guys, it's 400 bottles of Irish whiskey. Their menu, Bar, you've got a little video to show us in a second. Their menu is incredible. We're actually, for those who are on the whiskey bus in a couple of weeks, I have asked Mark Lonergan, who's the bar manager, to send me a PDF of their menu so everyone can have a look at it before they go there. They've won so many awards in recent years. They've won best Irish whiskey bar in Munster. They've won best whiskey bar in Ireland recently as well. I honestly cannot praise these guys highly enough. What they don't know about whiskey isn't worth knowing, and the selection is unbelievable. And a nice little thing, I think it's quite unique about their menu. They have an in memoriam section, which is all of their most loved whiskies that are discontinued and you can't get anymore. You can look at them, they're in a cupboard, but you can't taste them. But they're there. It's just such a great bar. Again, unfortunately there's not enough room for 40 people. It's a weird shape of a bar as well. That the actual bar itself is right in the middle, and you're kind of situated almost like in a horseshoe shape around the bar. So it's impossible for us all to fit in there at one time. But go in there in the afternoon, go in the evening, whenever you get a chance in Cork. This is your place. You can't miss it. You just can't miss it.
It's going to be absolutely packed most of the times you go there. But don't let that deter you. Like if there's one or two of you, what you've got to do in most Irish pubs is you just work your way through the crowd. There's this wonderful dance will happen where you touch somebody's shoulder and they step in a little bit, you move through, and you just keep doing this all the way till you get to the bar, get to the back. And it's an expected part of being in the bar in Cork or being in a bar in Ireland. So don't be afraid if there's people spilling out onto the streets, it doesn't mean you can't get in. It just means you got to join in the dance a little bit, and it's worth it. Now, the Shelburne is the greatest example we're going to share tonight of a bar that specializes in whiskey. However, most people in there at night are not drinking whiskey, believe it or not. Most people in there are drinking pints, they're drinking Irish coffees, they're drinking cocktails. The Shelburne has won awards for its cocktail menu. It's won a Guinness World Record for its Irish coffees. Most Irish coffees prepared in 3 minutes. Rory holds the world record for that. The Guinness World Record, I think it was 70-something Irish coffees in 3 minutes, maybe.
Amount, yeah.
They don't serve food in there, but they allow you to bring in food from Hillbilly's takeaway across the road if you want to bring it in. But why bother filling your stomach something that will take the space of the nice whiskey that you want to try would be my question. Always drink responsibly. And the Shelburne is owned by Philip Gillivan, who's a great, well-known publican in Cork. And Philip and the team just do a great job. Mark, like you said earlier, like the team in there, Mark and Tom and Rory, they are whiskey experts. They teach me something every time I go in there. They also are the only bar in the world to stock our Stories and Sips whiskies by the dram while available. I had a lovely moment last week in the bar, and I giggle to this day thinking about it, because the night I went in there, I think it was last Tuesday night, all the regular staff were off. Mark and Tom and Rory, they were all off, and I didn't know anybody behind the bar. And I went in and I spotted our Killoan 4-year-old whiskey behind the bar. And I pointed up to the guy behind the bar. I said, "Can I have 2 glasses of the Killoan?" And he looked up and he went, "Oh my God." And I thought, "Oh God, what's he going to say now?" He goes, "That is amazing whiskey." I said, "Is it?" Yeah. All right, yeah. So he pulled it down and he said, "This is the best whiskey I've ever tasted at that age ever," right? I said, "No way." And as he's saying that, right, he put down a Stories and Sips glass in front of me, right? Now, he didn't know who I was and I didn't know who he was, right?
Oh, brilliant.
He stuck the Stories and Sips glass in front of me and he said, "Have you ever tried it?" And I said, "I have, yeah." I said, "I'm Stories and Sips." He went, "Ah!" And it was an amazing moment where, unprompted and unled, he had said, "This is the best whiskey he's ever tried at that age." I loved it, like.
Isn't that brilliant though? But it's testament to the guys and how great they are with their education. Like, I mean, you launched that whiskey, the week previous to that, 2 weeks at maximum, and they knew about it already. Like, they are fantastic. Like, even throughout COVID, when I was still with Bushmills, I did online trainings with those guys. They still wanted to keep the knowledge level of the staff up for any new releases that were coming out. They adapted as well throughout the pandemic, and they still do them as well. They do little like kind of packs of whiskey samples, which they can send out to your house. You can do online tastings. All the tasting notes are there. The guys have done videos. I think it's videos of Mark and Rory mainly that talk you through each of the whiskies in that pack as well. There's a QR code link to the video. They just get it, and they do it so well. They are great lads, and as I said, there's no better spot. I genuinely can't speak highly enough about them.
I'm going to put the video up on the screen here of the menu, but I think the video is so long that the quality is not going to be great, but it's a 4-minute video of just me turning the pages in the whiskey menu. There's 400 whiskies, 399 of them are Irish, one of them is American, that's a Talnua single pot still. All the others are Irish, no Scotch whatsoever in there, no other American whiskies, no bourbons, and I'll put this video into our group again. I've done it before, but it's already out of date because, like you say, new whiskies come out. You'll find our Shortcross single malt on the menu. You'll find Stories and Sips, the Dunville's whiskey. Now, they're not going to be cheap, I can tell you that, because bars make a big, decent margin on their whiskies. I think the Dunville's is 70 or 80 euros a measure. The Cologne is 37 euros 50. They're not cheap, but if you do want them, they're in there. But their menu's already out of date from the one I have from a month ago. But you're going to get the PDF, Lauren, and send it out to everyone on our whiskey bus. Okay.
Indeed.
So this is the, it's very tough to see this now. I think the quality will be a bit hard to see. But look, basically, it's just 4 minutes of me turning the pages on all the whiskies. I'll put this in our Facebook group.
If you haven't already, give them have a look at them on Instagram, on Facebook. Their social media is fantastic, and they do keep it very up to date in terms of whiskies of the week, whiskies of the month, cocktails of the month as well. They are a whiskey bar, as we know, that they're obviously great selection, as we've said, but their whiskey cocktails are equally as amazing. So yeah, definitely cannot. It's my first stop in Cork, put it that way. That's credit enough.
I'm surprised that Cork is home to the largest concentration of whiskey production in the island. Midleton Distillery is just 12 miles away from the city, and Midleton's capacity is more than all other distilleries in Ireland combined. And with so much whiskey produced in Cork, Midleton, West Cork Distillers, Clonakilty Distillery, Black's Distillery in Kinsale, I'm surprised that Cork doesn't have a couple of other things. One is a dedicated whiskey shop, not somewhere that also sells whiskey, but somewhere that is a dedicated whiskey shop. And then the second thing is, I'm surprised there aren't actually more dedicated whiskey bars. So the cocktail trend, the gin and tonic trend, all launched bars around Ireland. But whiskey, like if I go to Dublin, I could probably pick out 4 or 5 bars. I could say to you, they've based everything around having whiskey. Cork, surprisingly, despite the whiskey production, doesn't have that.
That's very true, actually. Yeah, that's a good point. The whiskey shop one is a really good point, actually, as well, because both the other two kind of biggest cities in Ireland, or really kind of significant cities in Ireland, have one, Belfast and Dublin, but Cork doesn't. There's an opening for you, Barry. For Stories and Sips.
I had been looking for something to fill my time with.
I don't think we have enough on our plate at the minute, so I feel like we should be exploring this.
I know a good idea. When I hear one. I don't need to hear any more. That's good enough for me.
Let's do it. Cork gin. Yes, Cork gin is massive. Even in Belfast as well. Like if you go into the Duke, if you go into the Harp, Cork gin is the gin on Optic.
Did you know that Cork dry gin was created by Barry Crockett's father, master distiller Barry Crockett's father, Max Crockett, was the creator of Cork dry gin?
I did know that. It's such a popular gin.
She's just saying that. She didn't know that at all.
I did know that. Is this menu still going, by the way? Sorry, that's hilarious.
I'm still turning the pages. Like there's the in memoriam section there now.
This is why we're sending everyone the PDF beforehand, because nobody wants to waste vital drinking time like Barry has in this video. It took him 5 minutes before he ordered a whiskey.
There will be every night on the whiskey bus. There will be readings of this menu by me in the lobby of the hotel. I'll just be standing in the corner going, chew stack, single grain, 11 years old, €9.50.
Reciting, it's like our whiskey Bible, reciting the menu of the Shelburne bar. Great.
I think that would be a great video. Just me reading out. We could just do this so that people can have access to it whenever they want.
We'll do it. You should narrate it. Have a QR code on the menu, and then we jump to a YouTube video just of you narrating the menu. Done. Consider it done.
There's a great bar in San Diego, in California, called Craft and Commerce, and it's an amazing bar. It's based on the old Prohibition style of bars, where whatever back in the 1920s was available is what Craft and Commerce has now. So they don't have things like, there's no vodka, there's no even when they have food, like there's no ketchup for your fries, like, and it's basically so authentic to whatever was available back in like Prohibition era. But people leave the worst Yelp reviews because of it. And so like the bartenders are dressed in old period gear, and they got like the old, curly mustaches. And that's just the women, and they're all playing true to the old Prohibition style. But what they've done is they've taken all of the Yelp reviews and they've had the bartenders record them on audio, and they play them in the toilets. Yeah. So when you're in the toilets, you might hear pretentious bartender said no to ketchup, 1 star.
I love that. I live for that kind of marketing. It's like there's I think it's a cafe actually in Dublin. I think it's at White Moose, something like that. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But they do the exact same. All of their terrible Yelp reviews, Google reviews, TripAdvisor, whatever it might be, they put them on their social media, but they dissect them and explain why they had to do what they did, or why the customer was in the wrong, or something like that as well. It's like this anti-customer is always right sentiment. And then there's another one. Yeah. Have you seen the sign outside the cafe that's like, come in and taste the worst coffee that some woman on TripAdvisor has ever had, or something like that?
But the Shelburne is going to be a great stop for those of you staying in Cork, those of you coming on our whiskey bus in 2 weeks' time. It's right beside the Everyman Palace Theatre, which is connected to the Metropole Hotel. So it's all one street, one block. You're all on the old Victorian quarter of Cork. Be prepared that for the next 12 months, which includes when, sadly, we're there next 2 weeks, all of the streets are torn up for repaving at the moment. And it just makes it look a little bit chaotic. And our bus has to park behind the hotel rather than in front of it. But we'll get you all there fine. And it's just there's a lot of construction taking place in the street at the moment. But you can't eat or drink construction, and that's why you have the Shelburne Bar. You can go in and drink in there and get your fill. There's so much in that area as well. So for those who want more, from craft cocktails across the road in a bar called Cask, an award-winning cocktail bar, to around the corner a mezcal and tequila bar called Paladar, that's right, which is owned by the same people as Cask. There's so much in the one street. It's also the same street that hosts Cork Whiskey Fest. That entire street houses Cork Whiskey Fest. You're just north of the river, just over the bridge from Patrick Street, and 5-minute walk from the city centre. So the bars we've covered tonight would, to me, represent a great list of, when you're going to Cork, you got 2 or 3 days, knock these out. You'll have a great time. You have a mixture of music, crack, great whiskey, great pints, great characters. Are there other bars in Cork? There are. And if you've got more time, we can give you a longer list. But for me, the local, any one of these bars, except for Frisky Whiskey, I will happily drink in all night, any night of the week, and meet you there for a pint. I'd be happy enough.
Absolutely. That's the thing. When we were when I was making the city guides for Cork for whiskey bussers in a few weeks' time, honestly, that list could have been 15 bars longer than it was, but it's kind of like, where do you draw the line? You know, like, well, where do you stop? Because sometimes you can give people too much choice. But honestly, like, McCurtain Street is an amazing bar. You just mentioned their Cork and Paladar, the sister bar. If you do fancy a change, their cocktails are next level. They've won so many awards. Cask, in particular, obviously it's been around for slightly longer than Paladar. It only opened last year, and they've won so many awards for their cocktails. They use local ingredients, seasonal ingredients as well. So their menu changes depending on the season and what ingredients they can access sustainably as well. So unbelievable. Really, really great choice. I mean, realistically, you don't need to leave McCurtain Street. Obviously, if you want to, absolutely, but you genuinely don't need to leave if you don't want to.
If there are particular whiskies that you're looking to try while in Ireland, like, let us know as well when you're visiting. For example, those in the whiskey bus can let us know, and we'll try and figure out like where you might find those or where we've seen them on the shelf. I've, in my purely for research purposes, when I went out last week to try and find good whiskey, or kind of just to reassure myself or reaffirm my suspicions as to where good whiskey was, I found like Gold Spot behind the bar at Mutton Lane. I found Jameson Rare's Vintage behind the bar at both Mutton Lane and the Roundy, which is around the corner. I didn't mention that tonight. Didn't fully make the list tonight. But there's a lot of great whiskies out there. If you want something unusual, something from like West Cork, maybe some of their new releases, you'll find them in the Shelburne. So we'll be able to help you out. But look, there's a lot more to Cork than just whiskey bars. Great cultural city. European capital city of culture back in the early 2000s. And many people in Cork will wonder what city they're referring to when they refer to a city of culture like Cork. But there's so much going on. Great arts, great festivals, great theatre scene in Cork, and great music. So I think when we combine a bit of music, bit of food, bit of whiskey, we're all going to have a good time when we visit in 2 weeks' time.
Absolutely. I mean, as I said before, and I'll say time and time again, the two best nights out in Ireland you will ever have are Cork and Belfast. And I actually think they're very similar in terms of how people treat you. You said earlier, Barry, with like the welcome in, you just kind of feel like you're part of the fabric of the bar and of the people. Yeah. I've had very similar sentiments in Belfast and in Cork, just of how people treat you. They just bring you in, they chat to you, they'll treat you like they've known you for 10 years, never mind 10 minutes. And it's just lovely. It just really makes you feel like you're in traditional Ireland, which is great. Even though it's a city, it really feels like it's almost like a rural country pub in some places you go. Cheryl, you've just asked there about gin cocktails. I also love gin. Cask definitely is your place to go. They have a wide array of gin cocktails and local gins that they include in their menu. So that's your
across the road from the Metropole. And also, Cheryl, you might in one of the downtimes while in Cork want to go to Rebel City Distillery. You'll be able to walk there. It's probably a 15-minute walk from the Metropole Hotel, maybe 20 minutes. And it's the home of Maharani Gin, an award-winning Cork gin made with Indian spices, and really, really recommend it. And our friend Roisin, who was on the Shebeen a few months ago as well, she's the visitor centre manager at Rebel City. And Roisin's going to join us on the boat for our Lauren on the Lee. She's going to compete with Lauren's whiskey tasting skills by trying to overtake her with her guitar and see who gets the most votes on the night. No, she's not. She's bringing the guitar though.
There'll be a bit of shushing going on then, depending who's talking. I have 40 whiskey busters on my side, Barry. Don't mess with me here.
So check out that. Yeah, look, that's going to be a good night. We're inviting some folks to join us on the boat as well. That some characters, some of our Cork friends to join us on the boat. So we'll have a good night. There'll be music, there'll be whiskey, and Cork whiskies, and Lauren will be leading that. So that'll be a good old time. And you can board that boat from. It's a 5-minute walk from the hotel. 5-minute walk.
It is. And we'll feed you. We've got beautiful food. Cheryl, you mentioned earlier about the English market as well. We'll have beautiful food from the English market on board too. So we're not only feeding you whiskey, we're feeding you food.
And a good phrase to know when you come to Ireland is the phrase, a feed of pints. A good feed of pints.
A feed or a rake. A rake is another popular one. A feed or a rake of pints or a rake of whiskey. It applies to multiple beverages.
Lauren, do you have whiskey experiences to talk to us about tonight?
I do have whiskey experiences to talk to everyone about tonight. So if you haven't already signed up for our newsletter, please do. And of course, our website is now live, as many of you know if you joined us last week. The website is on the screen there, www.irishwhiskeyexperiences.com. Please, if you haven't already, sign up there for any updates and any new experiences that go live on our website. There are also a few spaces left on our Whiskey Bus 3. So, I mean, I think we don't have to explain this. Myself and Barry are great crack, along with Anthony. We're great crack, we're great fun, but we also like to provide you with a bit of education. So if you would like all of those rolled into one, there are still a few spaces left on Whiskey Bus 3 from the 15th to the 22nd of March next year, 2024, where we will take the bus to the Wild West, the beautiful Wild Atlantic Way of Ireland. We will not be incorporating Dublin in next year's Whiskey Bus, the first one anyway. If you can, of course, make your way in and out of Shannon Airport. We have a few spaces left. We'd love for you to join us. We're going from Limerick to Galway to Westport. And we've got a few beautiful experiences and lovely surprises in there for you as well. So if you haven't, I know a few of you on here, Greg's joining us, certainly, as we know. And there's a parade. Yes, there is, Greg. There's a beautiful St. Patrick's Day parade. We're in Ireland over St. Patrick's Day, which is fantastic. We're doing something really unique for that as well. We're taking part in a very traditional, very small parades in Kilrush in County Clare with JJ Corey, of course. Louise McGuan, who is usually in the US over St. Patrick's Day, has decided to stay in Ireland, especially for us, to host us, which is amazing. And then, of course, at the end of that week as well, you also have the option to stay for Cork Whiskey Fest, where Laurie O'Dwyer, of course, he's the founder and organizer. He has said that there will be a special Whiskey Bus tasting and also discount for any other Cork Whiskey Fest events throughout that weekend as well. So why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? So there are still spaces left, as we said. So the deposit link is on the website on irishwhiskeyexperiences.com. Check it out and join us. We're great fun and we'll make sure you have a memorable time. Promise.
It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good
great
time.
Great time.
What other experiences? Is there anything else you want to mention for our whiskey experiences, or is that a wrap?
Well, that can be a wrap, but also if anybody would like to kind of bookmark their Whiskey Bus visit, if you are coming with us or you're planning a visit to Ireland, again, check out the website. We've got an array of experiences on there. We can arrange your entire trip. We've got dinner in Dunvilles. You can have the entire distillery to yourself for the night. You can have Brendan Carty one-to-one for an afternoon if you want to set some fish alight with poaching in the Mourne Mountains, the beautiful Mourne Mountains, and tie in a little visit to Cologne Distillery itself as well. So there's an array of experiences on there to suit your budget, your time frame, your needs, and yeah, we'd love for you to join us, and we'll greet you with a smiling face and a bottle of whiskey in Ireland and a few pints.
I think we've given a good rundown on Cork. I think we have flown the flag for Cork. I think we have got people excited about what's possible in Cork. The bars we've all mentioned tonight, are all within walking distance of each other and of any hotels you'll stay in the city centre. We've omitted bars outside the city centre. So if you went as far as Midleton, for example, you might find a bar called JJ Coppinger's, which is right beside the distillery. They have a massive selection of whiskey, obviously very heavily weighted towards Midleton. But outside of that, most of the whiskey to be found in good quantities with great crack is right in the city centre. And our list tonight, I think, is a good summary. Thank you, Greg. Another reminder to hit the like button. If you've enjoyed our chat, our crack, we've gone on for almost 2 hours tonight. We swore it would be an hour, and here we are 18 hours later.
Never happens.
Give the old video a like, if you wouldn't mind. It helps us and keeps the old crack going for more folks to find us. Any questions that we've missed? I think we've got to almost everything there. What a good night of, and not a real pleasurable night. No work involved tonight. It was just a love letter to Cork.
We've done it. We've done it for Cork. We've done it for Belfast. We might move beyond those two. No promises.
We'll go back and do Belfast again next week.
We will, absolutely. Oh, the only two places you need to go to in Ireland are Cork and Belfast, and there's plenty of distilleries surrounding both cities.
Folks, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you in our Facebook community this week, Irish Whiskey Fans of America. If you want to join us on a whiskey experience, irishwhiskeyexperiences.com is our website. If you want to join the Stories and Sips Whiskey Club, we'll always welcome you, storiesandsips.com. If we can be of any help or answer any questions, we'll do our best to do that in our Facebook community, Irish Whiskey Fans of America. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and for participating. Hopefully you've got some insights. If you want any more, reach out to us, find us in the group, tag us so we see the post. We don't always see every post unless you've tagged our names, and we'll do our best to weigh in. Otherwise, bedtime.
Bedtime, absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. Support's always appreciated. Thank you for tuning in every single week. You're a bunch of legends.
Legends. Fair play. Legends. Thanks, Lauren, and thanks, everybody.
Slán
and we'll see you all soon.
See you soon.
Cheers, everybody.